Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hello everyone and welcome along to Encore Entrepreneurs. Great to have your company. My guest today is Azil Mohan. Azil is the founder of Resto Plus, which is a company that was formed in 2016, which provides websites and mobile apps for restaurants and cafes. Now in today's episode, we're going to talk specifically about how the business began, some of those challenges, intellectual property and venture capital, and lots more. Azil, welcome.
Thank you.
So the company's been going since 2016. How did it start?
It's a funny story. Well, first off, I always wanted to do a business, and I've got a great software co-founder who always, who's also on the same rhythm, in the same mindset in doing business and whatnot. So he migrated. Just a quick one. I migrated to Australia 15 years ago as a student. And
from where?
From India.
From India, yep.
Yep, from southern part of India, Tamil Nadu. And I came here for my higher studies. I did masters in business administration, accounting in University of South Australia. And after that, I got into work for a number of areas and ended up working in a bank, one of the big four banks.
Yeah.
I ended up the last role that I had was a relationship manager there. And anyway, so about 6 years or 5 years ago, the good friend of mine who studied with me back in India in my undergrad, so we were talking over the phone. Again, he was in India, I was here, and then we were like, look, why don't we, start a business? And then he said, look, I can migrate over to Australia. And I'm like, no worries. So it was a casual, fun chat. Maybe I think we had a couple of beers. So that's probably why it all started. And anyway, so he migrated over to Australia, and then we were talking about, what we can do. And at that time, I had a few of my friends who were in the restaurant industry, and they were struggling with the commissions that they're paying, and how I think at that time Menulog was the aggregator who was in party. I think Uber Eats was later after that, so that's when it started. Nish and I talking like, why don't we do something for the restaurant owners? So instead of their customers ordering through these aggregators, they order directly. So it started like a side hustle, just to start something. And then we realized it just not just a side hustle. It helps a lot of people and it enriches people's lives really, and the restaurant owners. So we thought, why don't we just make it big? And then I looked into it further and I realized food tech is actually $1 trillion industry, and there's not a single player who has become dominant in that yet. I think there's a lot of nuances in the industry. So we thought, look, we've got everything it needs to be there. So. That's when Resto Plus was born. So
in a general sense, tell us about the product.
Yeah. So the product focuses two main problems that the restaurant owners face. The first one is quite obvious. I think a lot of restaurant owners can resonate it, which is basically the commissions that they pay for their own orders, right? So technically, restaurants get all their orders. Most of them are regulars, and they order, but they choose these, Menulog or Uber Eats because the online platform is easy and you can pay online and all of that.
And they're the only ones around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So they've got no choice.
It's the only choice.
They have to get on board. Even those restaurants who are here for 20, 30, 40 years, even they have to be on the platform. I think you can't find anyone in it. But anyway, so the problem that comes with it is convenience is good for the end users, the customers, but it's costing them a lot of money. Restaurant is a small margin business. Everyone knows this. And taking 15 to 40% of their revenue, not the profit, I'm talking about revenue, is just going to have a huge hit. And it is. So that's the main problem that what Resto Plus solves. The second problem that some business owners realize, but the others don't, is the brand value that's being hijacked, right? So if they say, let's say Uncle John's Pizza, if Uncle John's Pizza's got a number of customers, they're ordering, that's a very popular place, ordering directly, but then all of a sudden people prefer this convenience and going through Menulog. Now they are no longer Uncle John's Pizza customers; they are Menulog's customers.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So these owners, again, I'm going back to my banking days. If anyone has a wages and they are employed, they got two things. One, the paycheck that they get week on week or fortnightly, and the second thing is their superannuation, right? But the restaurant owners, Of course, they take the weekly takings, but they don't often pay superannuation to themselves because their superannuation is the business when they sell, whenever they sell it.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But because their brand value is being hijacked, that is going down big time, right? So in 10, 15, 20 years when you want to sell the business, it may not be as big as you expected because your brand value is partly or if not majority being taken away by these third-party service providers.
That's a great point, and I also take your point that I'm not sure a lot of businesses, and in this case we're talking about restaurants and cafes, would have really considered that.
No, not really. So it's look, it surprises me. Again, it helps because coming from a banking background, I actually look at not just short term, I actually look at the long term as well. So when I talk to my customers, I'm met 400-500 restaurant owners, I think, as a bare minimum. And most often I'll ask, look, what is your long-term strategy? What are your plans? And they go, oh, look, mate. And I particularly ask them this question. Do you have a superannuation account? Oh, no, not really. The superannuation is my business. Everything is my business, right? And that's when I ask, look, if Uber Eats is providing all your customers, where is the brand value? When you sell it, what are people going to look for? So they have to obviously then think of balancing it out. They can take new customers through this platform any day, no dramas. But if someone's their customer, regular customer, they should order directly.
Yeah.
So only then the brand stickiness or brand awareness, stays with them. So that's a common problem that they face, and that's where Resto Plus come into play. So there's two main problems, as I said. One, the commissions that they pay,
Yep.
and two,
Branding.
Yeah. The value of their business
Yes.
is going down without them even realizing it. So this is the second important one, but most people not realizing that. So that's where what Resto Plus does is quite simple. Look, the customers are moving. They're moving very fast because technology is making them. Facebook and social media and all of these things. So they are going to prefer to order online. You can't change that fact.
And to make it as easy as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
Try ordering something or paying something online through the government. It's just ridiculously complicated. I mean, in a way, you feel as though it's going to be a little bit more convenient, but when you do it that way, it is just so complicated and time-consuming and really, really frustrating.
It is very frustrating. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think we had the census thing that was done by the government.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't talk wrong.
No, great example.
Yeah, I'm not talking wrong about that, but I think the tech team would have probably thought it's an easier endeavour to do it. That's a lot of times software guys what they don't realise. Is that they think things are easy, right? But until you actually put it this way, getting it 90% right is easy, but from the 90 to 100
the next 10%.
is the hardest bit ever. And I think that's where they dropped the ball, and it was quite embarrassing and frustrating.
Okay, so we digress just for a second, but for a reason. So tell us about the product specifically.
Yep, sure. So what we make is mobile apps for restaurants. All right? So it was a very simple concept. We say, look, we make the app in your business name. We've made a number of 150 plus mobile apps now in Apple and Google. They're all available. The Killer Tomato Pizzeria, Marcelina's, a lot of iconic businesses in South Australia and Adelaide. And we've got businesses all over. And the theory is very simple. Look, your customers should be ordering direct. If they don't want to pick up the phone and speak to you, give them the mobile app.
Absolutely.
So they could actually sit and browse and place the order.
It's logical, yeah.
And the message was simple from the restaurant owner to their customers. It's like, hey, look, you want to order online? Here's my app. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so that's where it all started. And
so in a way, it's interesting that we're talking about this now because, I work for La Trattoria, which interestingly is owned by Chris and Andy and Frank, and Chris and Andy's father actually started Marcelina's 50 years ago. Now, Marcelina's now is owned by a different person. But anyway. So in a way, this is actually replacing the phone call.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. Well, put it this way, I think Menulog and Uber Eats have already done it, but that's in the favour of end consumers only, not the restaurants. All right? And that's where we saw a massive gap. And to make it sustainable, the industry is unsustainable. You can talk to the CEO of Restaurant and Catering Association, Les, he would say the exact same thing. It's very unsustainable at the moment because of these aggregators. So there's a huge gap, and that's where we come into play and say, look, we're going to empower the small business by giving them the tools that they need to actually have a fighting chance with these big corporates. So that's exactly what we do.
What was the biggest challenge as you were building the business? What was one of the most significant challenges you found?
I think a lot of the business owners, particularly in the restaurant, are very good in what they do, which is basically their product, their cooking, and all of that. But they tend to miss how they are missing out on the brand value being going and commissions for their own customers. Like, this is the most ridiculous part. They're just missing out that part.
I agree with that.
So
I agree with that.
when I go and talk to someone, I need to explain them that, hey, have you considered this? And if you think about it, if anyone want to open a restaurant now, one thing, of course, my quality of the food is, you can't compromise on
Of
that,
course.
otherwise you miss out.
Yeah, and service.
Exactly.
Of course.
That's
yeah.
basic.
Yeah.
But the next bit is how your customers are going to communicate with you. That is as important as the quality of the food. And a lot of these businesses miss out that bit. They think, we'll figure out it later. No, those days are gone. You have to do that right from day one. Doesn't matter even if you don't, because things change very rapidly these days. You have to be astute and so I have to educate them. Look, this is something here. And initial days, that was the hard bit for me. But now that's getting easier and easier because most of my customers are doing fantastic. And a lot of the new people, the restaurant owners come to me because of my existing customers, either promoting their app themselves on Facebook and whatnot,
Yep.
or them recommending their friends saying, look, hey, you got to do this. Right, so the educating bit was the challenging bit for me during the initial days.
One of many things that one of many balls that you have to juggle. In terms of IP, I'm particularly interested in this. So you come up with an idea, and then someone steals it. Someone does something similar, exactly the same. Tell us a little bit about intellectual property and how that's developing along with your business and how important it is for anyone that's involved in a business like yours.
Yeah, I think intellectual property is an interesting term because a lot of people, they think as soon as they think of an idea, they think about intellectual property. Oh, look, I've got this idea. I'm not going to talk to anyone about it. I'm going to keep it to myself. One day I will do something with it, but that day would never come. So from my point of view, in my journey, when we started Resto Plus, we were like, this is a great idea, we're going to do it. We didn't think about intellectual property. We were like, look, let's test the product, let's make it work. Let's enrich people's lives first. Let them tell us that, hey, what you're doing is amazing. And after that, you know what, this is it, I'm going to make it. So that's how we started it. But there came a point we forgot about IP. We didn't consider it.
You were so busy in the business.
We were just, exactly. The business, had its own momentum and it carried away and whatnot. And that's when we had the Adelaide Business Hub who came into play. And
So just explain first and foremost what the Adelaide Business Hub is.
Yeah, sure. So initially we were just looking for a co-working space, me and my co-founder, because everything was happening in our garage. The typical startup story. I got photos and all of that for memory.
A lot of stories. A lot of businesses start in very, very unusual places.
It very does, doesn't it? On the
back of a car.
Exactly.
Or, as you say, in a room somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how it all started. So, and then, at some point we said, look, let's look for some co-working space. And we were looking at various options, and that's when we found Adelaide Business Hub. And the beauty of Adelaide Business Hub was it's not just a co-working space. In fact, they're not that. They've got astute, experienced business operators who run that place, right? And their main or primary objective is to support businesses such as ourselves.
And educate and mentor.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's all they do. And that was fantastic. I mean, to get out of the office and find someone and soundboard ideas, you can't get any better. So.
And is this where things became a bit more clearer with IP?
Yes, exactly. We were there. So anyway, we applied for the Adelaide Business Hub. There was a quick and simple process. Lynn and Tanya were fantastic, explaining us and walking through. We've been accepted into them. We've got our own office there, which is nice. And that's when I was looking into Adelaide Business Hub's website. There was just so many different things in their digital solutions program that we've thought about it in the past, but we've never acted on it because that's what small businesses do, because when you're just two people running with things.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then that's when Tanya was like talking to us. I'm like, have you done this? Have you done this? I'm like, no, I haven't. And at one point she's like, you haven't done IP? No, we thought about it, and she's like, nah, go do this. Go to this workshop.
This is important.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you went to a workshop. What was one of the key elements to that workshop that you walked away with that you thought, wow, that's a very, very significant thing that we need to do?
Yeah, I think was an eye opener for me in a general sense. I'll tell you why. Anything to do with any topic you give to these days, people will Google and say, oh, they'll spend some time on Google. They're like, yeah, I know what it is. And I did the same. I'm no different. I still do. But I looked at our intellectual property. There was a few links. You could do it online yourself and all of that. And I'm like, and then look, let me still go to that workshop. I went to the workshop and I realized, despite being that, self-learner and whatnot, what I've learned from Google was just the tip of the iceberg, just that little top bit. But in the workshop, it was depth. So they talked more in terms of what an IP is, and particularly, I was able to talk to them about my situation, and that's when they said, not just your coding is an IP, you've got a few other elements of it as well.
So there's different levels.
Exactly.
Yeah. Were you aware of that?
Not really.
No.
Not before that.
Can you be a little more specific about the different levels? Just give us a brief overview as to some of those different levels that you weren't thinking about that you now know.
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, we were talking. How about we just register the trademark? The Resto Plus name,
which a lot of people would probably default to. Yeah,
exactly. So we thought, that's IP. That's probably the only main thing that I can think of. But then obviously the way we structure our software, the way it's been coded, because look, a lot of people, software developers, there are a lot of good ones, there are a lot of mediocre ones, and there's heaps of really, really bad ones. And they all think the same thing. It's making a software is easy, right? But it's not. So we've done a fantastic job from end to end, and our customers love it. So that the entire process, the entire system needs to be IP'd.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
That is very, very in-depth, isn't it?
It's yeah.
How do you go about that?
Well,
again, you don't need to give me the long form answer.
I can't, because I'm not a specialist. That's where the workshop and the specialist.
And you bring
come into
someone
play.
else in.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
You have to bring someone else.
So because there's no physical product, is there? It's not physical. I mean, it's on your phone.
That's right. It's,
yeah. So that causes issues as well. I mean, from an IP point of view, that's different again to, someone who has developed a physical product.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. It's complicated, and that's where you need actually
an expert.
Yeah,
expertise.
Because if you're creating a different way of a water bottle, that's just very innovative and whatnot. So that's a physical thing, right? So it's easy from people's point of view to comprehend that you can IP this, but when it comes to software, it's just hard, and you need a specialist to sit with you and go through to say, okay, this is the bit that you're gonna, safeguard it and IP it.
So to completely safeguard yourself, and I'm not expecting you to give away confidentiality here, but to completely safeguard yourself costs money.
Oh, look, absolutely.
And where do you spend that money? Where do those costs come from? I mean, are we talking lawyers? Are we talking, how does that work?
There's obviously some government fees in registering IPs and whatnot, that's based, but look, there are a few things that you could do yourself online. As I told you before, it's like, there's only very high-level things that I can think of if I'm doing it all on my own.
Yeah.
But obviously there's some costs involved in, dealing with the IP specialist. You have to pay for the specialist. But it's not huge.
Are they ongoing costs?
No. It's like a
So
one-off.
the bulk of them are one-off?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The bulk of them are one-off.
Are they, I know these are fundamental questions, are they yearly costs? Some of them yearly costs?
That's
5 yearly costs?
Mostly the government thing is IP is, I think it's for 7 years or something.
Like when you buy a domain, you pay
yearly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
monthly, yearly, whatever it might be. Okay.
The government registration, like a business name and trading name.
So what would your advice be to anyone who's in the business that you're in, software? What would your advice be, in short, in regard to IP? What would your key message be?
Engage a specialist. As simple as that.
When? At what point in the process?
When you've done your MVP and POC, I'll explain that. MVP is minimum viable product. So obviously, a lot of the tech people, when they think of an idea, they think, oh, I've got a great idea, I'm going to IP it, but they don't do anything with it. So that's not going anywhere. So unless it's a fantastic idea and eventually you're going to pursue it, that's a different story. So you create the product, a minimum viable product, don't go to the extent. Sell it to the market, not your friends, definitely not your friends. Sell it to people who don't know you. They use it and see not just the cost benefit, look at the actual value of the product. And at that point, your customers will actually tell you, look, hey, what you've done is amazing. That's the point that you go, geez, you know what I've done is amazing, and I'm going to have to safeguard it. And at that point, you engage an IP specialist and say, hey, this is exactly what I do. tell them end to end, not just the top bit, and then they'll be able to figure out to say, okay, these are the bits that are your IP, and this is what you do.
That's excellent. That is really good information.
For us, though, Mark, one of the other thing was we were talking about software as a service. That's our product, and we were like, "Are you just in Australia?" And like, "No, we've already done it in New Zealand," and then that it was back then. And like, "What about America?" And so you have to register these in different areas as well.
Great point.
Yeah.
So it's regional.
Oh,
Great point.
It is.
So at the moment, you have registered Australia,
Yep.
New Zealand.
Yep.
Are they tied together, Australia and New Zealand? No. Australia, New Zealand.
Yep.
And then once you start to expand,
We've done in India.
you've done in India?
Yes, we have, because that's obviously a massive market. And we're also looking in America. The steps are long. It can take up to 7 or 8 months.
Can it really?
Yeah, it can. But that's just the process.
Yeah.
And it's just a standard process. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you've done it and once the initial process is done, I think you can still claim that, yeah, I have it. But to actually become 100%, they have to do an extensive search. And yeah.
Valuable information, really good. I want to talk about venture capital in a second. Before I do, I just wanted to ask you briefly about advice that you might give someone, and I know this is slightly off on a tangent, but there's a reason for it. There's a method for my madness. What advice would you give someone who is already in a job? Perhaps they don't like the job. Perhaps they sadly have been made redundant.
Yeah.
And they'd like to become an entrepreneur.
Yep.
They'd like to change direction.
Yep.
What would your advice be?
All right. If you don't like doing your job, whatever that you're doing, because it's hard or if it requires hard work, then I would say entrepreneurship isn't for you. But if you don't like it because your passion lies somewhere else, then that's when you actually look at, okay, what else can I do with my time? We all have limited time in this world, so think about that. And there's just so much support available. You're in one of the best countries in the world to access support if you want to be an entrepreneur. You cannot, I couldn't imagine. I mean, coming from, as I told you, coming from a place like India, it's a great country, no doubt. But in terms of opportunity and the support, Australia is fantastic. So if you don't like your job and if you think you've got some of the passion that you want to pursue, get out, do it.
Make the call.
Make the call.
Yeah,
It's a leap of faith, yes, but take it.
It's a big thing, isn't it? Changing one's direction, changing their life. Michael Place is a psychologist, and I asked him, how does one change their life?
Well, the first steps are to evaluate what your values are. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what's important to me, what do I care about, what is working in my life, what is not working in my life, and what do I want to change? And really getting clarity on that, and then start doing some research. We're very fortunate to have the internet these days, and you can learn anything that you want to learn on YouTube and Google. And so the first step is to figure out what is it that you want to learn about, and then do the research.
Welcome back to Encore Entrepreneurs. My guest is Azil Mohan, and Azil is the founder of Resto Plus. I want to talk about venture capital. So have you gone down that path yet? Is that an area that you're looking at, or are you halfway through?
Yep, we have actually. Just earlier this year, we've started thinking about that and applied for one of the great ones, and we were lucky enough to get onto it despite having the COVID situation. Because when we did, anyway, I'll come back to go back to the original when we started. Resto Plus was running absolutely fine. We had, we got a lot of number of customers, and they were restaurant owners, and they all love us. They haven't left us, which is amazing. So
you're funding yourself.
Exactly. I mean, that's how the initial years were all sweat equity. That's basically just my time and my partner's time. That's all it is. We didn't put any dollar value there, but there's a lot of hours gone in there. But then after a certain point, we got a number of customers, and we were just self-funded, cash flow positive, no dramas going well. But at that point, Nish and I, Nish is my co-founder, we were talking, look, what we're doing is really amazing, and it's not just him and I saying, it's our customers saying that to us. There was a client from Sydney rang us and literally out of the blue and said, look, what you're doing is amazing, just keep doing, thank you very much. And he hung up. So that was just out of the blue. So I'm like, look, we're doing really nice things. Why don't we just make it big, right? And that's when we're like, but to make it big, you need more money. So there's two ways of doing it. One, increasing our price and spending more on marketing. But then again, you got to find the balance. And the restaurant industry is an industry where you can, just throw money at. So we got to keep the costs low. But the other way is then obviously capital injection. So we personally thought, okay, venture capital is probably a good time for us now. That's when we started, looking into it, and we applied for Scalata Ventures. Scalata Ventures is based in Melbourne. It's backed by the chairman of Scalata is Paul Little. Mr. Little, you'd know him from many different phases of his life.
Businesses,
Yeah, so he's the head of Grand Prix Australia, and he was the ex-managing director for Toll Holdings, and he's got Little Property Holdings. So I think, there's no introduction need for Mr. Little. So him and his team were the backbone of Scalata Ventures when we applied, and they still are. And this was just during the COVID situation. So we applied for it. They looked at what we did so far, what we've done, and they like, yep, no worries, we're happy. Let's move on to the second step, right? Second round of interview. And that's when COVID struck, and there were like 155 companies in the application process. And we went in, we presented ourselves and said, look, this is how we can actually not keep us sustainable during the COVID. We said, because of us, there are so many other businesses that can go sustainable.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that just resonated to them really well, which is nice. So, and then at the end, 6 of us gotten into the program. We've been backed, so there's been investment made by Scalata Ventures, and more importantly, the good thing is we are into a 6-month program within the Scalata Ventures.
And what does that look like? What does that program look like?
Oh, it's full on. It's everything. What do you need? Not for a startup company. What do you need for a company that is, let's say, as big as Google or Facebook? So, starting from scratch, from your fundamentals in terms of how you structured your company, to setting up a growth engine, a growth hack. How do you scale? How do you go to the different countries, different region? How do you make yourself accountable? Entrepreneurs, more often they become a bit soft when things go well. But then there's another party who come into play and say, look, maybe there's something better you can do. So have you considered PR? So there's just all facets of business to make it a big, sustainable, long-term company.
So that is part of the venture capital journey.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's exactly right.
So what about the financial aspect of it?
Yeah. So we've been funded. We've got investment from them, obviously, as part of the program. And that is purely to use for growth, marketing and expanding into different regions.
And how did that make you feel when you were given that tick of approval? Did it give you more confidence? Was it sort of like a sigh of relief and say, wow, this is great, now we can go forward, and really expand?
All right, I think I've got to be honest with you here. Like, it was fantastic. Now I can say that definitely it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But when the tick of approval was given, we took a step back and said, look, why do we need this, right? As business owners, we're doing all right. There's nothing wrong with our business. Our customers love it. We are growing. So why do we need this? So we went back and forth type thing. And then we looked at, there's definitely, investments in capital injection is required to make this bigger. Because quite often, small business and entrepreneurs will think in a small box.
Yep.
So, but that point, we realized, okay, now that we got the tick of approval, and then we sat and discussed, okay, we need the injection to make this bigger. But then we also had this program where they actually take you down the entire process.
The path, yeah.
The path.
Yeah, so they don't just plonk some money in front of you and say, there you go, you're on your own.
Yeah, no.
Because they want you to succeed.
Exactly.
Clearly.
And that's what we want too. We didn't want just the money. All right. I think, in fact, if we were given just the money, I don't think we would have. Well, we would have spent wisely. We would have grown definitely, because even without it, we were growing. But we wouldn't be able to grow as strategically
without the education.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it just goes hand in hand. So I think the program is a combination of the 6-month education program plus the money that comes into your.
What's the most? This is probably a tricky question for you to just pull one out. It's a bit like asking a footballer who's just retired, tell us about your best game.
Yeah.
It's always a hard question to answer.
I'll give it a shot.
It's an easy question to ask. What's one of the most significant things you've learned? during the educational period.
Yep, I'm still in the period, by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah.
But month and a half I've been into.
Ah, okay. So maybe it's not that difficult to ask because you've only got a month and a half to sift through.
I think confidence is
Really?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. No.
So something as intangible as that.
Well, that's the thing. It's a fundamental thing, isn't it? I mean,
It is,
If you might think, okay, so were you not confident before? No, we were confident. We were confident in that little box that we had in our mind. Maybe Adelaide, maybe Melbourne, maybe Australia. But when these guys come into play and they look at what you do and they say, look, this is global, right? Why would you stop yourself like this?
Yeah.
Why don't you think bigger? Look what I've done in Omni Studio, for example. He's the founder of Omni Studio. Is Ed Hooper. He's our coach now, right? And so him and his team, obviously, he's part of Scalata Ventures, and they were like, just think big. Whatever you're doing, it's beautiful, but I want you to think bigger.
Wow.
So that just infiltrates more confidence in us to go, yeah, you know what, it is big. So we just then started thinking, soundboarding with them and, all the professionals that we can get our hands on. And yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Confidence.
Confidence,
Wow.
indeed.
We heard from Michael Place earlier, who was a psychologist. This is what he had to say about confidence.
Self-confidence is really the key ingredient to anyone living a successful life, isn't it? Because ultimately you want to believe in what you're doing and you want to believe in yourself. And having that sense of belief in self just makes things go a lot easier.
It's interesting, isn't it? And confidence is just so important to everything we do. You can gain it quickly, but you can lose it quickly as well, can't you?
And there's different levels.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
different levels. So as I told you before, it's not like we weren't confident. We were confident in what was within our brain. It was within that box, whatever it might be. But then when you go to the programs like this, when they look at the picture, it's a bigger box, it's a bigger everything, and then you know that feel where you go like, oh, can I do that? I may be confident within my zone, but when you actually push out of the zone, and yet if they made you become confident in that bigger zone,
Yeah.
I reckon you're going places.
Yeah, I could talk about confidence all day. Seriously,
No, of
and you could too. Clearly, I mean, it's the backbone really to achieving in a lot of ways, and I think one of the great things about confidence is that it's sort of, I guess it increases the more you take risk as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people live a safe life because they don't want to, in their view, fail. But in my view, it's not a matter of failing. It's just that result wasn't particularly good, or it wasn't the result that you wanted. And I also think that a lot of people, when they try something, Azil, I'd be interested in your views on this. They try something and it doesn't work, and then they stop.
Yeah.
They stop. What are your thoughts on that?
Stopping is essential, but you have to know there has to be a benchmark, and you need to get there before you really quit. Because obviously, when we first started, we went to a number of, I personally went to a number of my clients who are restaurant owners. The first few basically said, nah, this isn't going to work, I'm not interested, sorry, just get out, and, all sorts of nonsense that you'd hear from people. But had I stopped there, it's a different scenario. I knew that, I have to move to a spot, a benchmark. I should have seen, maybe 50 people. And then what is the reality? So not 5, not 10. You have to push that number as big as you possibly can, but not taking years either. So there may be really a bad idea.
Yeah.
We can't just say every idea will work. But you need to put in that effort to actually have a sustainable number. And if you can't come up with that your own, talk to someone who's smart enough to actually tell you, okay, this is what you're doing. You need to do this. And even after that, if you don't get traction, perhaps you can tweak it.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
where these guys,
That's great advice.
Yeah, the Scalata Ventures guys are really good at it because and the beauty about this, because they're not just, they're not like professors and all their life they've just been teaching top thing. They've actually been through this journey themselves. Like for instance, Ed Hooper, who's our coach, he's done his own share of the startup world, and he's actually an investor himself now. He's been through the journey. He's Omni Studio was sold to an ASX listed company and whatnot. So we're getting advice from people who's been through our journey.
Absolutely. It's priceless.
Oh,
It is priceless, isn't
Yeah.
it? You can't buy that.
Exactly. And who can give me the confidence? Because
Yeah.
when you're a startup entrepreneur and you've seen some success, it's really hard to take advice unless it comes from the right person.
Absolutely.
And that right person is someone who's done the journey, and you could see that clearly.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's just, open your mind like, this is amazing. So we just take in whatever they throw at us.
Azil, I've really enjoyed this. This is wonderful. Maybe just as we conclude, what is the next step with your business? What is the next key element or the key step to it?
Great. Mark, in my mind, there's two ways of acquiring business, people. And one of them is actually throwing a lot of money in marketing, like lots and lots of money in marketing. So people will know, behind the bus and, everywhere you name it. But that's not my style that's not in my vision anyway. So I want to make the product enrich people's lives so much that they talk about the product, And right now, a lot of my customers are, but it isn't enough. So that's where I'm doing more to make sure people understand that there's this product that can help their lives, like it can enrich them. So my goal from here on is actually to make sure a lot more restaurant owners know that we exist, because a lot of people don't.
Awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my first thing. And all I want to do is tell them, look, we are here. This is what we do. I'm not here to sell them anything down their throat, but I want to tell them, look, this is there for you.
This is an option.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to take, because I don't believe in, selling like a, car yard salesman. There are a few that I'm talking about. They stick things down your throat.
Yeah.
My idea is not that. I want to educate you. I want to tell you, like, this is the world that we're living in right now, and you need these tools to actually be successful in your business.
Yeah, and you use a really key word there, educate.
Exactly.
Educate and also, enrich people's lives. That's a key element too. If there are restaurateurs, owners listening now, how do they get in contact with you?
Well, they could first thing obviously jump into our website, have a quick skim through, but
and the website name is
restoplus.co.
Cool.
They could find us. There's plenty of blogs and whatnot, but I definitely encourage them to get in touch with us over the phone, because I think there's a lot more when it comes to education than just reading. I've personally been through myself. So there's contact numbers in there. Give us a buzz. We can
Azil, I have had a ball. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed this. I love talking to people who are achievers, who are positive, who have a vision, who have a love for helping people, and I think that's another thing. And maybe we can finish on this. It's not about taking; it's about giving.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
Oh, you're spot
You
on.
agree with that?
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
The more you give, the more you get back.
Exactly. I think there's a clear 80-20 rule. Even in Facebook and LinkedIn and all of that, 80% you got to contribute to the community, and 20% maybe, if you're lucky, you can get back. And that's one of the words that's said by Seth Godin as well, one of the leading authors that I follow. Before you can even get something out of people, you have to give them so much
100%.
that they should feel like they obligated to give you that
100%.
back. So I couldn't agree with you more. So we do our bit. In terms of supporting a lot of small entrepreneurs and startups to explain them, what we've done and what's wrong, what's right. So we do our best and try and grow as a community.
Azil, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me over.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.